use the chat if you've got questions from the audience. You can use the chat along the way, and then when Andrea's finished in the 10 minutes, we can also invite questions using the hands up, and you can actually speak your question as well. So whichever is most comfortable for you.
Okay, so I'll just get started then. Okay, so thanks for joining us today. So my presentation is going to be around innovating to provide affordable and quality higher education by examining two challenger universities that operate here in Africa. So I'm based in Kenya. My interest is in innovation in higher education, and that is one of the studies that came out of that. All right, so just to give you a little bit of a background research. So Sustainable Development Goal number 4 um, ha has two targets included. And one target, number 4.3, says that we want to achieve equal access for all women and men for affordable and quality tertiary education. And another sub-target says that this education should provide the young people actually with the skills for employment, decent job, or entrepreneurship. Um, so I'm going to, within this realm of tertiary education, my presentation is going to focus on higher education only, and specifically on how do we provide this affordable and accessible higher education. Now, the challenge we have here when I say across Africa, where I'm based, is that the current higher education system cannot absorb the graduates that come out of secondary school. So a lot of investment has been gone into getting children into primary and secondary education, and these generations are now moving slowly into higher education. However, there is a clear supply-demand gap. So only 9% of children who are eligible to go to higher education. So of all these children who are eligible, only 9% can go actually on to higher education. Just in Nigeria alone, 1 million students every year are eligible but cannot be placed in traditional higher education, traditional universities. There's just not enough space for them. And those that actually are able to go into higher education, they are traditionally coming from a higher income percentile. So they are, very well-off families who are either able to provide supporting tutoring, or they are willing to pay education fee in private higher education here. So there's a clear supply-demand mismatch. The other challenge we have is even those students that are going through higher education, there is kind of education employment gap. So if you just look at Kenya, a graduate coming out of a university here on average needs about 5 years to find a graduate job and a full-time formal job. Now, that's clearly not acceptable. And with the Sustainable Development Goal, we really want to get more kids into higher education. And this education actually should provide them with the skills to then find a graduate job. Now, however, there are a lot of demographic, political, economic challenges that impaired current universities to actually provide higher education. That ranges from a lack of PhD level educated educators so a couple of years ago, Kenya only had about 350 PhD level educated academics. So though we have a number of universities, that's clearly not sufficient enough numbers of academics. We have a very high student-teacher ratio, even in higher education. And there were a couple of scandals recently where, and one academic apparently supervised 150 PhD students. Now, I haven't gone through recently, so my PhD, I'm not sure how that is possible. So there are some challenges in the current system. But students do really realize this employment gap or these challenges in the system, and they demand better educational provision, and they demand jobs that give them a job afterwards, right? They want this job market payoff with education. Now, okay, so clearly in this kind of situation where universities are not provided to able to provide sufficient number of places as well as quality places, we need more innovation to actually address this challenge. However, as we all know, we work in higher education. It is a very conservative sector, and especially if it comes to more disruptive innovation, and not just doing things a little bit better, but really doing things very differently than we've done before. The sector is very resistant to those changes. And that's what Cooney and Towers really called universities are ocean liners. They're very slow to change directions, and it's very difficult work. And there, again, many barriers. One of the challenges here, for example, is there's policies. And we just had a workshop last week, and academics were saying a big challenge is policies, a big challenge is the culture that impairs innovation, a big challenge is that academics don't know how to do it, so human capital is a problem, but also management generally, who doesn't understand how things need to be changed in order to get things done. However, in this climate, in the literature, I don't know where's my movie. There's a concept we call disruptive innovation, which I would like to apply in this study. So disruptive innovation has been really termed by Christensen, who's based at Harvard University. And it does not refer to the level of innovation. So is it incremental, or is it really radical? Is it very different, or is it just a little bit better? It really refers to organization who emerge, who in markets that are being neglected by incumbents, so by traditional universities in our sense, who do things very differently and take away that customer base that the incumbents neglected. I gave you two examples. So one is, for example, Foundry College. And Foundry College has a very specific niche and a very specific target market. And its mission is to equip working adults with skills and knowledge that they need to excel in jobs that are being displaced by automation. So it only focuses on that specific needs. EDU is another example based in, I believe, in Malta, and it's basically a medical college, but it provides education in a digital only model initially, and then later students go on actually across Europe to do their placements. So they are positioning themselves to customers who are neglected by incumbents, and have a very specific niche. So what Ulrich calls it, they focus on a very specific jobs to be done, right? In that case, with Foundry, jobs that are being displaced by automation. Or EDU is helping medical students to gain the knowledge and then being found placements. So they focus on customer needs, which a lot of universities neglect. Importance as well that their business models often use novel technology or business models. So they often provide online education, as you will see in a moment, or blended education, but also it offers them an opportunity to actually provide a very different kind of student experience than traditional universities. So one disruptive innovation, one form of an organization in higher education is the challenger universities, right? And challenger universities are characterized by five specific characteristics. First of all, these are new organizations, so they are not much older than 20 years. And importantly, they're full-term degree granting organizations. So these are not what you see a lot, these boot camp 3 months, become a coder kind of organizations. These are fully degree awarding independent organizations. And they fill this existing university gap. We said they fill the need that incumbents overlook by offering a pedagogy experience or student outcome that is very specific and very unique. And again, they're using this novel technology or business model, what we know to characterize disruptive innovation. So what I'm going to look into is 2 challenger universities and how they are innovating to provide accessible and affordable education in Africa. So the research question is, what are the specific practices that these 2 challengers apply to achieve affordable and quality higher education. So basically, what are they doing to achieve sustainable development goals forward? Quick word to the methodology. It is a qualitative case study methodology. It was chosen because it really explores in depth what has happened in these universities. Really, and in very detailed where it describes the innovation practices each of them applies, and then it really explores how does that address affordability or quality, right? So it addresses both explorative as well as explanatory. It has two cases. The first one is the African Leadership University, based in Mauritius and Rwanda. And the second one is Nexford University, which is originally from the US, but very strongly marketed in Nigeria. So what I've done is data collection was a document analysis. So we collected all kind of different documents about their operations, their strategies, their business model, their finances. So from annual reports and financial reports to interviews the founders have given, newspaper reports, etc. And we use them to really, like O'Leary says, apply an interview technique to those documents to then identify what has happened, why it has happened, and the impact. So just quickly, a very brief introduction to the two cases. So the first one is Nexford University. It was founded in 2017 in the US. And launched 2019. It is a completely online program. Learners can be based anywhere around the world, and it aims to provide this affordable, rigorous, competency-based education. We will come to in a moment. As I mentioned, it's very strong here in Africa. So Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa are one of the most important markets, but it's now increasingly expanding to other developing countries, especially around Southeast Asia, the Philippines, and this direction. The second one is the African Leadership University, very different. It is actually a campus university. It has two campuses, one based in Mauritius, one based in Rwanda. It targets very specifically African secondary school students, graduates who already have some kind of leadership abilities, who have shown that in some way. And it really wants to provide them with an excellent education, the kind of Harvard of Africa model here. Its educational model centers around 3 pillars. Every student has to take a leadership core, and then they choose a major rather than necessarily a specific subject. The big vision when it was founded was to open 25 university campuses across Africa by 2035. That has changed dramatically. Think what came out is they realized pretty much that's not going to happen, due to just the sheer financial resources that are required to open 25 campus universities in about 15 years. So the model has changed in 2022 to a new distributed learning model. They still have their campuses, but students now can be our first year on campus and then go and learn online in the remaining years. A lot of this learning is self-directed within the community wherever they base themselves, and it's also competency-based, and it requires a lot of technology to make it happen. So we're going to look at the 2 key practices that these 2 universities apply in order to provide this kind of affordable, accessible, quality higher education. So the first one is they're applying financial innovation. They're really rethinking how to pay for their provisions. So this is a quote from Fred Swaniger, the founder of ALU, and he says, clearly we know traditional funding models don't work in Africa. Africa is actually the only region in the world where post-student financial education funding allocation decreased over the last couple of years. So governments are not a sustainable funding source. Families can't really afford to pay fees. There are some grant makers who sponsor scholarships or give grants to higher education. However, that's never going to be enough to really support all the students eligible to go to university. So philanthropy is not a way. So we need to really rethink what are other ways we can actually pay for this. So both universities applying a couple of innovation. So one is really interesting, and I think very few universities in the West are using. It's how fees are being paid. So if you do charge students, how do you charge them? So one is they're using monthly installments of students' fees, not an annual fee, just because the chunk you need to save up is massively reduced, right? So that reduces the pressure on the parents, and they can earn as they go. And that goes hand in hand with modelization. So both universities, especially NXU, Nexford, you can start the degree pretty much, or every module, pretty much every month. So if you don't have sufficient money in January and February, you can take a gap, work again to earn some income, and then come back in March and pay for that module, right? Again, reduces the burden and allows people to actually go and work while they're studying. Another really interesting thing is they do pricing localization. So the degree does cost differently depending on where you're situated. So I gave you the table on the right. And you see, if you were, for example, based in region A, that could be a high income country like the US. Actually, a course costs you about 280 US dollars. Well, if you're region D, which could be something like the Philippines or Kenya, Nigeria, your fee is substantially less, right? And that again really targets students who have a lower income and enables them to join. So affordability. Another
5 minutes.
small, yeah.
5 minutes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Um, Another thing they do is they often use open source materials. Again, that not requiring students to buy books reduces the cost. Okay. The other thing they do, which is really interesting, is they're using a hub and spoke model. So a lot of universities in the UK, for example, have branch campuses. Hub and spoke is slightly different. They do not open their own branches. They rather rent space in existing co-working spaces, and students can then go there and study there. And that gives them a couple of benefits. One is the biggest barrier to online education in Africa is access to reliable internet. And if you then go to these co-working spaces, that's what they provide, right? Reliable access to internet. They also give you access to local mentors. So you do not rely only on the mentors that are around Birmingham and could come in as guest speakers or could come in as mentors. You suddenly, by opening up spokes in different countries and places, you suddenly increase your pool of potential members. So again, it enriches the quality of the education. So ALU wants to have about 50 spokes. It has opened 19 so far, and NXU has opened where they are very strong. Now, underpinning all of this is really a strong use of emerging technology, from identifying what employers want and what the education should look like to providing actually this online education in the hubs. And that is different to traditional British universities, for example, who think about technology as a kind of afterthought. These are really tech-enabled, tech-empowered organizations that try to use that where technology is at the heart of what they do and how they do things. So just a couple of quick notes. So it is not this kind of use of technology per se what makes them disruptive. It's really about how that requires the university to rethink assumptions around who can be a lecturer, right? How is education being delivered? What does place for us mean? It's not just the campus, it could be anywhere. However, interestingly, both of what I just told you, the financial innovation and the hub and spoke model, really contribute to affordable and accessible higher education because it reduces also unit cost. So if students don't have to be on campus, I can educate more students. More students pay fees, the cost goes down per student, right? But jury is still out really. Are they delivering quality education with this model, right? If all the students are around the world, can you still deliver the quality that they were used to have, for example, on campus? So just a couple of, it introduced the concept of disruptive innovation um, to the research on higher education. And we identified four specific, so I introduced two in this presentation, but four very specific product process or business innovations that you can use to develop accessible and affordable higher education. And unfortunately, innovation research is often dominated in the Anglo-Saxon context, and we really provide that, expand that to higher education in Africa. So what is worth further researching is really, does it generate improved learning outcomes for the learners? And can that be scaled? So they open 15 hubs at the moment. Can that be further scaled? Or what are the challenges along the way? So thank you very much, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Really great start to this parallel session. Really interesting area that you're covering. I know there's a question from Pam already in the chat. If Pam is there and wants to ask that, if not, I'm happy to do it.
Hi, thank you very much for that, Andrea. It was really interesting. I just mentioned the Open University here because I'm particularly fond of it. In the 1970s, when I ran away with an Italian and got pregnant while I was at Edinburgh University, something you didn't do in those days, apparently. The Open University saved my sanity. And then later I had, as research students, academics from the Open University. But just want to say that in the 1970s, I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to listen to the radio and borrow a television from a neighbor because we couldn't afford one. So there was a lot of aspects of my experience as a young person that might mimic what you might find with your students. Nevertheless, those of us who were really keen to access this education found a way and means. And I had to deliver leaflets around the local area and things like that to pay for it. So it was, again, this access issue. I just wanted to alert you to the symposium that was on earlier. I don't know if any of you attended that, on widening participation, that was addressing similar problems for international students coming to the UK. Yours is about international students in their own countries. I think one of the issues that you might be facing as well is that there is, we don't want to colonize using UK type teaching methods in Africa. That is not necessarily the way forward. And I wanted to alert you to two colleagues of mine, Julie Reeves and Dawn Duke, who are working in Africa or with African researchers. One is AREF, which is the Research Excellence Fund for African Research, and Breccia, which is the Global Challenges Research Fund. And that might be useful for you. And we are considering putting together, we are putting together a session probably around Easter about working with different epistemologies when working in other countries or with international students. So some of you might be interested in working through that. So that's from me. Thank you for that. It was really, really interesting. And I'll shut up now.
I don't know if you want to pick up on the Open University comment, Andrea. I mean, there is Open University, isn't there, out?
Yeah. So I mean, that is the kind of model that's often used as a kind of radical innovation that was 30, 40 years ago, right? But I think So yes, it was transformational for a lot of students where that is. But we also, for example, there's an open university in Kenya. There's going to be one launched for Africa. They're not as transformational, right? Because, for example, of lack of access to internet or etc. So it was very impactful in the UK. It's not necessarily in other contexts.
A message from Vicky, a hand up from Vicky if you've got a question.
Just a really quick one, because I know you're short on time. Be quick. Thank you, Andrea. That was super interesting. I think it's fascinating to learn about all of the different types of approaches, and particularly, I think the point you're making about, you know, these innovations, these adaptations we can make to our programs to make them more accessible for all. And I think there's a lot to learn still in that space in the UK. And my question was kind of connecting to what Pam was saying there. You told us that a lot of the literature is very much framed in the Anglo-Saxon context. And obviously one of the programs in particular you were talking about has been very much kind of US generated and created. Because of your closeness to, you know, the topic of provision in Africa, and particularly the cases you've been looking at, I wondered if you did have any thoughts or comments around that kind of colonization element of, you know, kind of creating a program based very much within the knowledge in the Anglo-Saxon context.
So it depends. So one of the challenges that are whatever university program you're running has, there is very little or hardly any in higher education, business school studies. There's very little about local case studies, local books that you can use. You have to use the cases from the US. So there are efforts being made by different research centers here to write local cases and to address that. I think these universities, especially African Leadership University, is run by South Africans. So I think they do, and their vision was to be the Harvard of Africa, to educate Africans. They do put a lot of effort in the curriculum on kind of African concepts of doing business, Ubuntu and all these kind of things. So they're trying to address it. It takes time, right? I mean, this writing of these textbooks or case studies takes time, but they're making an effort. I think what we didn't look in this research is what is being taught, right? We look at the innovation practices around financing, around business model innovation, the processes. That would require another kind of study along, are they being innovative and being what is being taught? And that was not covered in this study.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Cheers, Andrea.
We're getting close to time, but if there's any further questions, we've probably got time for just one more. If not, I have a really quick one. It comes with the changes in model, and I wondered, you know, with this more flexibility in terms of being able to take pauses in your study, whether that was, how was that having an impact on completion rates, or were they, you know, was it translating in that way?
I couldn't tell you because they both changed only recently. So that's why I'm saying we really need to look at the learning outcomes from that. But the role of the academic has very much changed to supporting individual students in their learning rather than teaching whatever content. So they do make an effort to support students with that in terms of completion rate. But also the completion rate is relatively high because they're engaging a lot of these internships, because they're in the co-working spaces, they meet entrepreneurs, they can do internships. So they do quite a bit of this kind of hand-holding support to achieve student learning outcomes. But we need to, again, maybe 2 years when the first generation went through this program, really, then we can see what the learning outcomes are. And
Brilliant, Andrea. So we look forward to having an update, yeah, with the next phase of your research. Yeah, so I can see Vicky's doing a nice clap for you. So thank you so much. for starting off this session. I'm going to move swiftly onto our second speaker. So we've got Yusuf Olaniyan from the University of Bath. I probably didn't pronounce that correctly. He's going to be talking today about higher education is the scam, critical media analysis of the value construction of higher education in Nigeria. So we've got the same framework, 20 minutes presentation from Yusuf, 10 minutes for questions. Add your questions to the chat as we go along if you'd like. Raise your hand at the end. Yusuf, I'm going to hand over to you and I'll give you 5 minutes when you get up to 15 minutes, okay?
Thank you very much, Karen. Can I share my screen now?
Are you able to do that?
Yeah. Okay.
Brilliant. Good.
Yeah. Ooh. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, good. Good afternoon from here. My name is Yusuf, and I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Bath, in my first year. So this research, I did this research when I was doing my Master's of Research, and it was basically because of my experience in Nigeria and because of things that I see and observed online. And that was what led to this particular topic, higher education is a scam. And especially there was something that happened in Nigeria that was like 2 years ago. There was a guy who returned his university certificate to the university, and this guy was telling the university to return his money because the certificate doesn't have any value to his life. The certificate is a scam. So, and there's a lot of these narrative online, people questioning the value and the construction of higher education. What is higher education all about in Nigeria? So that was the whole thinking, and that was how I got the inspiration of these topic. Like, okay, if higher education is a scam, then how does people construct higher education in the media and on their web, the university website as well? What are they saying about higher education in Nigeria? So these are the three research questions that I proposed. I want to explore how education is being constructed in public discourse and whose voices are prominent and silent in construction for higher education in public discourse, and what messages do Nigerian universities send out about an ideal student. So these are the three research questions that I set out to explore. So thinking about this, when I do this research and I was reviewing literature, my findings weave around three concepts, which was globalization, neoliberalization, and internationalization. So I theorize my findings with this very concept. And what I did when I was reviewing literature, I decided to take a contrary stance to the position that equates the relationship among these phenomena as a linear progression. So that was why I said they are cogs in a wheel. So I'm thinking about all of these things differently based on what I found in the media and the website of a university, why they're constructing higher education in Nigeria. So I realized that this concept, globalization, doesn't necessarily lead to neoliberalism and internationalization in space and in time. All of these things co-create or co-influence each other. So that was basically my argument when I was reviewing literature. I was just teasing around these three concepts. In thinking about an IT student as well, because I wanted to know how universities are constructing an ideal student from their website. So I found that I set out this question or this phrase saying an ideal student is not a metaphor. And what led to this was because I realized that most of the findings on the university website and in the media, a lot of them are constructing an ideal student from academic capitalism, ontology. And there's a lot of literature that talk about an ideal student, how an ideal student in a university. So I was just like, okay, this thing is not a metaphor because it was very evident in my findings. And I decided to advance this discussion by saying this is really not a metaphor because the word ideal, it's no longer about want, it's about real. It's real. I said it exists, it is real, it's substantial, and has become a need. And this was because on the media, I'll be showing you the findings of my study as I progress in this discussion. It was found that an ID student are the ones that embodied employability skills. So if you don't have these skills, you can't even compete in the global market or in the job market. So these things are no longer an ideal. They are the need, they are the currency that you need. They're like the capital, as Boudou put them, the capitals that you need to access job opportunities. So, and I also argue for the multidimensionality of the agencies constructing the ID student. And what I meant here was the fact that when constructing ID student, it transcends disciplinary or contextual boundaries. Um, and I believe must be must be mutually embodied by an ID student. So what I mean is that regardless of the field of study, if you're studying medicine or if you're studying sociology, there is some set of skills that is expected of you to have as a student, as an ID student in university. So it's like multidisciplinary, it transcends. It's not like it's particular to one particular discipline. It's multidisciplinary and multidimensional. Yeah, so in thinking about these, my theoretical framework was informed by two theories. I used CDA, critical discourse analysis, and basically I used the theory to look at the power dynamics and narrative hegemony in the media, how the actors and the agencies who are speaking in the media are talking about this concept. So I used CDA and I used those institutional arbiters and social magic. I use it to theorize the construction of higher education and ID students from an academic capitalism philosophical paradigm. So that was what I did. Yeah, and in thinking about my methodology, I said doing it differently because there's a lot of people that have researched something around the challenges of higher education in Nigeria in terms of access, in terms of the experience, the transition experience of people into higher education in Nigeria. But this few of them have exploited with this particular method I use, which is the media or visual analysis to ring-fence everything. So I use explanatory sequential mixed method. I decided to look at the number of who are these people, how many times do they say things? I was using thematic analysis to kind of code frequency. It's a very large data. I wanted to include it here, but it was too much for the slide. But I just used descriptive analysis just to count the number of articles are published around education, the number of articles are published around higher education, and the number of articles are talking about the construction of higher education. So I was looking at these articles and these different lenses. So that was what I did with the quantitative aspect of the work. And the qualitative aspect of the work is when I was looking at the text itself, not just about the frequencies and things. So including the articles that I used for this study, the inclusion criteria was basically an opinion piece in the media. So some political piece in the media, there's some advertisement in the media advertising higher education. I decided not to exclude those ones. I wanted to know the opinion of people in the media. That was my main inclusion criteria. And in exploring the higher education website, I decided to select 24 public universities in Nigeria across the 6 geopolitical zones. I spread these 24 public universities across these geopolitical zones. And the media outlet, I used three news media. I used The Punch, Daily Trust, and Daily Post because of their wide access and because of their reputation in Nigeria. And because these media outlet has a wider dissemination of education issues in Nigeria. So that was the reason why I chose these 3 media outlets. And here, sorry. So here, this cyclical thing shows that it was not like it was not linear process. I was just moving around media articles, images and photos and website. It was not a linear process when I was doing the analysis or when I was doing the data collection. It was not linear. So I collected narratives in news, I used images and I use narrative as well on the university website to answer my research questions, and data analysis. I use thematic analysis, critical discourse analysis, frequency count, and percentages. And now, the interesting part is what I found in my study. I found that a labor market, I found that the higher education in Nigeria is being constructed or is being driven by a model commodification of higher education, which is linked to the force of globalization, neoliberalization, and internationalization. So higher education in Nigeria, in the media, they've been constructed like as a factory producing graduate to be able to get a job. That's what the media is saying about higher education. Even on the website of the universities in Nigeria, they're very particular about saying, okay, we're producing graduates that will be able to get a job after their studies. That's what they're projecting. So, and in literature, this kind of narrative is connected to globalization, is connected to neoliberalization, and it's connected to internationalization. So when I was theorizing these findings, I connected these three concepts to my findings. And an ideal student as well in Nigeria, university is the one who embodies moral and societal values, one who exhibits graduate employability, and one who possesses academic skill. So these are like the three values, or these are the three things that that a graduate or a Nigerian student is expected to possess to be an IT student in Nigerian universities. And it was really interesting when I was theorizing these moral and societal values. I was thinking if higher education in Nigeria is driven by these three things: globalization, neoliberalization, and internationalization. And a lot of literatures have critiqued all of these, have critiqued globalization, neoliberalization, and internationalization for their capacity to colonize and their capacity to push some kind of a neo-colonialism agenda, especially in Africa. And higher education in Nigeria reflect like the construction of higher education in Nigeria reflect these three things. And if you're expecting your student to have a moral and societal value, then what kind of morals, what kind of values do you expect them to have? So in discussing my findings about this moral and societal value, I brought in the issue of Boko Haram, which is like terrorist organizations in northern part of Nigeria. And I was looking at the historical antecedent of this Boko Haram, what led to Boko Haram. And it was most of the things I found online was because they believed that Western education was haram is like illegal, kind of, if I get the correct translation. So they believe that Western education contradicts their value, contradicts their tenets and belief, which is hugely driven by Islam. So these people are resisting Western education because they believe that, if there was a very interesting quote there, like there was from someone that says, your innocent child goes to university and learn all kind of things that are different from what is applicable in our society. So that was the whole thing I was trying to talk about when I was theorizing this moral and societal values. And the one who exhibits graduate employability is very connected. It's like there's an interdiscursive relationship between what media are saying and what the website are saying regarding graduate employability. There's kind of a connection there, and the one who possesses academic skills as well. So, and there was power imbalance because I wanted to know who are the people saying these things about higher education, who are the prominent voices in the media, and who are the silent voice in the media. So power imbalance and social inequality in the discourse around higher education was found, where the government and the academics have more discursive power and control over this discourse in the media. So the academics and the government, they're the ones saying, constructing higher education to be these in the media. So while the student, the parent, and other stakeholders, their voices are silenced in the media. And yeah, so just like I said,
Yusuf, 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. There's an interdiscursive connection as well between these concepts in the media and the website. So here was basically I used this particular model for analyzing the images, because on the media, when either government official or when an academic is speaking about higher education in the media, they use their pictures. Even when the issue is about the student, they still use their picture. And I used this model of REIS, the legitimization strategies in political discourse, just to analyze what these pictures mean when they use their picture. So I used authorization, rationalization, moral evaluation, and hypothesis just to analyze. And in this study, government officials and academics who are represented most in the media use similar strategies to legitimize the positions on higher education. So it's like they present their views as authoritative because of their role, which is authorization, and the logic because they align with the market needs, which is rationalization, and morally correct because they contribute to economic development, or even inevitable due to globalization. So that's my analysis for the pictures. And lastly, contribution to knowledge, or thinking about what next. Now we know how higher education is being constructed in the media and the hegemonic voice. And if Nigerian graduates consider higher education as a scam and does not add any value to their life, especially in getting jobs, and the media is saying, are we preparing graduates to be able to get a job, then what happened? What's going on? What's the challenge? And what's the way forward? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Just laughing at your picture of the cat. I noticed that there is a question in the chat already. Just let me have a look. Vicky, do you want to ask it?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks. It's been really interesting this morning because a similar kind of question was posed in the paper I presented in the session before this around the way in which the value of higher education is kind of in question, particularly in the media. So I mean, I'm coming at it from an area of entrepreneurship within the university. So, you know, the debate's still very much alive. Can you teach entrepreneurship? But yeah, I did wonder, because you're immersed in this and what you think, you know, if what we're facing is this devaluing of higher education in the media, what do you think we should or even can do about that, or should we be trying to think of how to kind of react to that? Just was interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, I think just like I said earlier, my research was just an exploration of what's happening in the media. And I think the fact that some voices have been silenced in the media is something that was quite interesting. Why is it that it's only the government official and academics that they're speaking about higher education in the media? The major stakeholders, which are the students, are not saying anything about higher education. The voices is not there in constructing what higher education should be, not the academics and the government dictating what higher education should be for them. So, and in terms of vocationalization, it's very significant and imminent in my findings as well, because they are using it interchangeably, entrepreneurship, vocationalization. There's a lot of things around that. They're trying to incorporate that in the curriculum just to help students probably. Well, everything ties towards they want to prepare graduates to be able to get a job. But my main concern is that this is what they say, and that's not the reality. So my research is just like kind of a door to many corridors of other research, kind of. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicky.
Andrea.
Sorry, can I just ask you? It's not entirely clear to me. Sorry, more coffee is needed. So, who thinks this is a scam? Why do they think it's a scam? Like, I love your findings and what you discussed, but I don't really see the relationship between globalization, neoliberalization, internationalization, and a scam. So can you just point this out to me one more time, please?
Okay, just like I said when I started my presentation, I said when I was discussing the background of the study, I tried to look at the Nigerian unemployment rate. I looked at what are people saying in the media about higher education in Nigeria, what has been there. And I shared a story of a guy that returned a certificate saying higher education is a scam because it doesn't add any value to his life. So this is like someone, and there's a lot of protests. There's a lot of people protesting against the university, challenging the university, saying it doesn't have any value to their life. People are protesting for high cost of tuition fee in Nigeria because of university. So that was where the idea said, okay, I'm just posing a question if it is, people are saying it's a scam or people are saying this thing about higher education. It's like kind of a metaphor. Then this is the reality in the media. Then what's going on? If the government are claiming that the university is preparing graduates to be able to get a job, and graduates are saying they can't get a job. So my research is just like I said, it's just an exploration. I can't make a conclusion or a definitive claim. It's just to show that now we know what media are saying, and we know who are saying these things about higher education in Nigeria. Then who is lying or who is what
Okay.
happened? Yeah.
About the quality of education not being good and what is being portrayed in the media that
Yeah.
it leads to a better life and those kind of things. Okay, I see. Okay, now I got it. Okay. May I just, what would be interesting, because I think you said you're early in your studies, is to actually then do a kind of other study. It's like, what is the real situation in the perception of the students, right? How you started with the story,
Yeah.
and then compare that with each other, right? So you have the data from both sides. Then I could go to the point of saying, is it a scam, right? Or is it not? Because you have both perspectives. But very interesting research. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying for me.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Pam has picked up in the chat as well about images and scams. And I had a question actually around the images, because I've used critical discourse analysis to inform some of my own work as well. So I was quite interested to hear a little bit more. And you did start to talk about that, about how you analyze the images. And it seems to me that you focused on representation. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so who was represented and who wasn't? And am I right in thinking that it was often the government officials and academics that were represented?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So who wasn't represented that you expected to be, I guess? And then you maybe want to respond to Pam's point there as well about this this deliberate choice of images as well, you know, because people will choose the images, which, as you say, about legitimacy,
Yeah.
was one of your findings, wasn't it? So yeah, more about how you approached your analysis of the images would be great.
Can I just say quickly that I have suffered being told what I should put in my advertising for courses, and being told that I have to have someone with a wheelchair and I have to have someone, and those are being manipulated to tell a story about my university. And I think that relates to what's going on here. I think it's political.
Yeah. Which CDA is great for, isn't it, Yusuf? I would imagine as a method.
Yeah.
Go on and tell us a bit more about the images and.
Yeah. Regarding the images, what I did was I was just looking at the images when I look at the media constructing higher education, and I look at, okay, who is this, what kind of images used there. So it's good. It's when I count the frequency, I realize that it's the image of the government officials and the academic. They're the ones saying all of these things, and they're legitimizing their positions with the images, positioning themselves as authority. Like we are in charge. Like whatever we say, because there's a kind of a power relations here. The government officials and the academics are believed to know more, or it is believed that they know more, or their positions or their opinion about higher education count or should count compared to other people because of the power relation. So putting their picture there, I just use that RES model to like they're using it to legitimize, just like a lens to look at it interpretively. Like it's just like they're using it, like we're saying it and that's how it should be. It's about us, about my position, and you should take it that way. It's rational, it's authoritative, kind of. So that was what I did to analyze the picture.
And were there many pictures of students?
There wasn't many pictures of students. It was like I reviewed couple of hundreds of media, maybe like 4 or 5 were instances where some instances, a picture of university buildings will be used, and yeah. So I was just
Even on
really concerned.
institutional websites as well.
You mean the university website?
Yeah, even there.
Yeah, the university website. Yeah, they use picture of a lecturer saying something about it, or they use a picture of um yeah, of a picture of the buildings, like a department buildings and other things. And some they don't use pictures at all. They just put the name of the person who is saying about higher education. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think in the
How-
chat someone said, sorry, Pam in the media said, it said in the chat, lovely research design was also not images are deliberately constructed to convey a perspective. Is that part of the scam? Wow, I don't know. I can't say. It could be politically. It could be they're using that to legitimize the position, being an authority. Yeah.
If there aren't any questions, I have another one that's more methods based. You seem to have drawn on a lot of different data sources, and I think I read in your paper that you when you did your media analysis, it was for the year 2020, 2021 or 21, 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How many articles did you end up with? How many opinion pieces did that end up being?
Yeah, I did let me quickly check. I have a Prisma flow of the exclusion and inclusion criteria of the article. Yeah. Let me just quickly share my screen to show you.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah. So this is like a table showing the prominent and silent voices in the media. So the government official frequency is 73, percentages is academics, this is the number, non-government official, this is the number, others, this is the number. So this is around prominent voices and constructing. And in terms of the media itself, so this is the new media, the news media for 2021 and 2022. This is Punch News. And this is number of education news published in 2021, the blue ones. So you can see the distribution here. It's a very complex and so this is number of news that talks about higher education, number of news article that talks about value, number of news that you published in 2022. This is for one media outlet, and this is another one for another media outlet. And this is the Prisma flow. It's like the last thing here. Yeah.
Yeah, so quite a substantial data set I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why you've used different approaches to analyzing the data. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Claire, you had your
Thank
hands
you
up
very
a
much.
minute ago. Was that a question for you, sir? You're on mute.
Sorry. I was interested in this construction of the ideal student. Quite fascinating, really. And I was just wondering if those values that you outlined of embodying moral and societal values, exhibiting graduate employability, and possessing academic skills, are they in that order? Are they rated in that order of importance by the press, or are the three values kind of interchangeable?
Yeah, these values are not in order, they're not in category. I use thematic analysis to look at those themes. I was just looking at the themes or at the main themes that comes out from the narrative on the university website. So there are instances where they're thinking about academic skill, like reading skill, critical thinking. So I call them as academic skills. They weren't talking about values. I code it as well. But the thing was, they were not very explicit about the moral and the value on the website. But they're very clear about the employability. It was very, very obvious there. Like, this is what we want to achieve, or this is how an IT student, or this is what an ID student should be. But in terms of moral and societal value, they were not very specific there. They were just saying moral. We want them to be morally upright. But what kind of moral was not very specific. That was why I decided to challenge that by saying, okay, if you're saying you want these people to embody some kind of a moral value, and university is being constructed or is being driven by an academic capitalism, which is connected to internationalization, globalization. So, and Nigeria has a colonization history. And in fact, our university are founded on colonial structure. So if you're saying you're promoting a moral, what kind of moral? Whose moral is it? So that was why I brought a case study of Boko Haram, the people resisting higher education in the northern part of Nigeria, which is what researchers say. This is the reason why these people are resisting higher education, because they believe that the morality in university are in conflict with their own kind of morality. So that was the whole discussion there.
Oh, that's interesting. No, that's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
And it links a little bit with the discussion we had with the previous paper as well, doesn't it, to a certain extent? Yeah. I don't see any more hands up at the moment, and we are at the end of this presentation slot, but so maybe we can thank Yusuf at the moment for his interesting presentation, and look forward to seeing the development of the work as you move forwards as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening.
Now, we are due to have another speaker, but I've had a message to say that there are some issues with their connection. And we're not sure whether they're going to be able to join. They were here briefly. I don't know if you've had any updates about that.
I'm afraid we don't. Just that the internet connection kept dropping. So it's very possible that we will not have the third paper, unfortunately, in this session, which is, yeah, it's unfortunate, but sometimes it happens.
Well, I think we've been very lucky with the two previous papers. I think they've given us a lot to think about. Certainly, it seems that they've also been connections with things that people have seen already today as well. So that's really good. And I'm sure that, you know, those thoughts and discussions can move into other parts of the conference today. And for those who are attending the face-to-face conference when that comes a bit later. I can just give a little bit of an update of things to come. We've got a slightly extended lunch break now for those of you who are on that time zone. I know not everybody is. And at 2 p.m. UK time, there is a Meet the Network Conveners parallel session. So if you're interested in the different networks that the SRHE hosts, do come along to those. So they are International Research and Researchers, Higher Education Policy Network. I'm one of the co-conveners of that with Colin McKay. Postgraduate Issues, Learning, Teaching and Assessment Network, Employability, and then Newer Researchers. So that's from 2 until 2:30. So do have a look at those and come along to those sessions if they're of interest. So thank you all for your participation. Thank you for the questions, and thank you to our two presenters, Andrea and Yusuf. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Andrea.
Well.